My name is Tammy Bailey, and I served in the United States Air Force.
My name is Tiffany Freeman, and I was in the United States Army.
Hi, my name is Nina Ellison, and I was in the Air Force.
I joined the Air Force because my dad was in the military and my Uncle Glenn was in the military. So when I was younger, that's just something I always aspired to do. And so they were in the Army and I joined the Air Force though.
The reason why I joined the Army was to go to college and because the benefits was better.
Well, first of all, I had an uncle who was in the Army, and he influenced me and told me all the wonderful things that you can get by being in the military. You can have discipline, you can get an education and things like that. And so even though I was poised to go to college, I decided to go to the Air Force because I can get college there as well.
Being in the Air Force in general changed a lot of things in my life. I wouldn't have the job I have today. I wouldn't have gone back to college. I wouldn't have gone at all. It taught me how to rely on myself.
Being a woman in the Army impacted my experience by helping me to learn my strengths and my weaknesses.
Well, being a woman, I noticed there were differences. And I noticed there were differences in how they treated women in the military and how civilians were treated, meaning wives of military men. When I had my daughter, I was not allowed to have any medication, no drugs, nothing. They made me do it carte blanche. But a military wife, she was afforded the medical treatments and the drugs and things like that. So I noticed there was a difference, and I was kind of mad about it because I'm like, I shouldn't have to go through any more pain than the next woman.
Was I ever discriminated against in the Air Force because I was a woman? There was one incident that really sticks out in my mind. Prior to going to the first Gulf War, the unit I was with was asking for volunteers to go rather than force someone to go. And we had a commander at the time that didn't think that us women should go. There were 3 ladies that volunteered to go, and he was not going to take us. He was going to take non-volunteers that were males. Lucky for us, we had a major that worked in our squadron as well, and she went and defended us to the commander and explained to him that that situation was entirely wrong and he was discriminating against us because of our gender. So in the end, we were all able to go and we resolved that issue.
Being in the Army, I was reminded constantly that I was a woman in the Army. By that, I mean, it was instances where at war zone, we would drive on convoys and we would be going down through a town, and it would be kids running in the street with weapons. And as a woman, I felt sorry for the kids, so I would soften up and kind of tense up. And the men would basically tell us to toughen up and do the opposite. So we were forced to think as a man when we go through, different situations.
I believe I was discriminated against because I was a woman, but also because I was an African American woman. Just the ratio of men to women in the military is kind of different. Women, there'll be 1 woman to every 1,100, 1,200 guys. But being an African American woman, the ratio was even higher. And so what I noticed is that many times the hair requirements that they had for women of other ethnicities, we couldn't adhere to that. And so if we wore braids or French braided our hair, we were looked down upon, saying that it was a trend, when actually it's a part of our ethnicity. And so I noticed a big difference in that.
Trials I had to overcome as a woman in the Air Force. For me, a lot of them were physical to start. Learning how, I wasn't that physically fit when I went in, so going through all of that and learning how to do the push-ups and different things like that. And then when I was in basic training, I was a flag bearer, which means that you hold the flag and you do the different things when you're marching and in the parades with the flag. My drill instructors at the time had never had females before, so they had always had male flights. So when they gave it to us to do, they decided to pick me because I looked like I had more upper body strength than some of the other ladies did. Totally not true, but managed to get through it. And in the long run, it made me want to do things like that more. So then later on, I joined the Air Force Honor Guard, where we do the burial ceremonies and do flag raisings and that type of thing. So in the long run, that was good, but at first it kind of sucked.
I overcame many trials as a woman in the military. I learned how to do physical things that I couldn't do that I thought only men could do. So as a woman, I toughened up physically and mentally. So I accomplished a lot of things as far as how I looked at things, thinking that only men could do it and women couldn't. So I went through different obstacles as far as I could do push-ups and sit-ups, and I only thought that men should exercise like that. So physically, I strengthened my body as a woman to withhold the same abilities as a man.
I had to overcome, first of all, the trials I had to overcome in the military was, number one, men looking at me as a little woman. I was tall. I didn't weigh much. I probably weighed 128 pounds when I went in. So they looked at me as though I was vulnerable, as though I was weak. And I had to prove myself through physical activities, through the different trials and tribulations I went through learning my job. My peacetime job was more administrative, but my wartime job was disaster preparedness, rescue and recovery. And when you're operating in those fields, men think that they dominate them, but we had to show, hey, the ladies are here and we have a way of penetrating things and getting it done just as well.
I think some things have gotten better, but some things are still the same. Women can now do more jobs than when I was in the Air Force. Women can be fighter pilots. They can go into active combat, where when I was in, that wasn't possible. So the restrictions on the jobs that women are allowed to hold in the military has significantly reduced. But you are still going to face times where men will discriminate against you, sometimes on purpose, and sometimes not necessarily on purpose. They think they're being chivalrous. You know, it's okay for them to hold the door open for you while they're in uniform if they are too, but it's not okay for them to go and assume that they're going to go pick up the heavy box because you can't. Even though they think that they're doing that because they wouldn't want their sister or their mom to have to do that, actually they're discriminating against you and they don't even realize they're doing it.
When it comes to situations in the military for women, I'm not sure if it has gotten better or gotten worse. I feel that now, as women, it's a lot of women that go in with kids and they have to leave their kids behind to go to war now because the world is at war now than it was back in the day when women used to go. So I don't think it's getting better for women because the situations that they're put in now is not the same as, you know, they did back in the day.
I would say that things have gotten better since I enlisted. Some of the things that I dealt with as an African American military member, female military member, was that we were looked at kind of differently. The way we handled ourselves, the way we did our hair. They wanted us to standardize ourselves to other races rather than be who we are. And I believe nowadays you can be who you are, they accept you for who you are, and value the differences that you bring to the force.
Women that want to join the military, it's a wonderful experience. If I could go back and do it again, I'd go back and do all of it again, the good and the bad. But there's challenges with it. Are you going to be discriminated against today because you're a woman? Yeah, it's no doubt in my mind. Are you going to have problems if you have a family and you have children and you need to leave your children? Most definitely. And those are hardships that, whether male or female, that's a hardship. But for the moms, it's even harder to go off and have to leave their newborn or their 1-year-old at home. It's not something that any parent wants to do.
My advice to other women that want to join the military is to make sure that's exactly what you want to do. Have a plan, and always have a plan B, because as women in the military, we go in with a certain set of mind, like we're going to go in and we're going to get a career and we're going to pursue, you know, different things and go to school for different things. And once we get in, the whole situation can change because the world is changing every day. So it might be if you go in, you might not get to go to college and you might not get to go until you get out of the military.
The advice that I have for women who want to join the military would be that number one is the military. It is a job, you will get a career, and there are wonderful benefits. But first off, you're raising your hand to serve your country, to lay down your life, to maintain the freedoms that we have today. And with terroristic activities and the wartime situations that we go through every day, you really need to be cognizant of why you're joining the military. The things that I hope that would change in the future in the Air Force and the military in general was that we won't have to fight as much. We have technologies now, we are further along scientifically in every other way, but we're still fighting wars. And the wars that we're fighting are becoming more frequently and closer to home. I would hope that we would become peacekeepers rather than being in military combat at all times.